Town of Mint. We'd like to open the regular council meeting for the town of Minturn of March 6, 2024. Roll call, please.
Brian here.
Ed here.
Eric here.
Terry here.
Dusty here.
Earl here, and Kate will be.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, if I can interrupt, Kate is on as an attendee, but I can't, she's not letting me move her to a panelist. So if she's listening, I've sent her another request.
Okay, so
So she is in the audience. She's just not.
are you sending the request or you want
Yes.
some?
No, I am.
Okay, that's fine.
And I also have a Lindsay Lydia, which I believe is on the thing. Should I move her up, Michelle?
Yes, thank you very much. She'll be a panelist for later this evening.
Okay. Now if you would, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States. The republic for which it stands, one nation under God, with liberty and justice. Okay, next item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda. Is there anyone that wants to pull any of the items? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'm sorry. The consent agenda includes an agreement with Eagle County related to security for the Minturn North subdivision. As I indicated in the staff memo on that, one of the exhibits is a letter from Eagle County. They sent us the revised letter yesterday. All it does is omit a reference to curb and gutter because there's not going to be curb and gutter on that section of Minturn Road.
Okay.
I just want to note that's going to get substituted out.
Okay, thank you.
I can redo the motion to include that, curb and gutter will be left out.
Well, this letter that I've handed out will be substituted into the
Okay,
agreement.
with the current letter that we have in our possession.
Eric seconds.
Okay, motion by Gusty, second by, sorry.
Eric.
Okay. All in favor?
I
Opposed? Okay. Next, we have approval of the regular agenda. We do have one amendment on item 10F. Ordinance number 2 will be moved to 8A in front of the manager's report.
No, it still needs, I'm so sorry, it still needs to be under business items,
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
but it just needs to be before business item A as an apple.
Oh. 10.
10A.
Okay.
And are we doing item A?
We will be requesting a continuance for item A.
I just saw it down.
Okay.
Motion
mhm.
to approve the agenda.
I'll second that.
Motion by Terry and a second by Gusty. All in favor?
I
Opposed? Okay, next is, do we have any conflicts of interest on any item on the agenda from the board? Terry?
I will be recusing from Belden Place settlement.
Okay. Thank you, Terry. There you go. Hearing none, we'll move on.
Before we move forward, are we gonna hear the substance of your application today, Woody?
Whatever you want to hear. But Lynn does need to recuse.
She would need to recuse
Oh, yeah.
herself from that.
I was waiting for you to get the declaration to come.
Yeah. Okay, so Lynn will be recused on that item. Okay.
Excuse me if I can interrupt. Terry, did you say you were going to recuse for something?
I'm recusing from item B, Belden Place application for additional water SWs.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Next item on the agenda is public comment. If there's any citizens here on Zoom land that would like to address the council on any issue that's not on the agenda, please raise your hand. Anybody out there, Jeff?
Excuse me, no, there is nobody out with their hand up.
Okay. Next item, council comments and committee reports. Ryan, you got anything?
I don't.
I don't have anything.
Just a reminder, it's still snowing. Please make sure you guys are clearing your sidewalks and not into the street before the plows come through. Or after the plows come through.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to do.
And I don't either. So moving on, we have staff reports.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So my manager's report is in the council packet. Should anyone have any questions, there are two items that I would like to bring to the council's attention. One is the Minturn Forward efforts that Scott Hunt and his planning team are leading. This is for land use subdivision regulation and updates that are happening. There are 3 open houses scheduled in the coming month that planning team is hopeful residents, business owners, and those that are interested will take the time to attend. This will be to talk about zoning in different areas of town, a lot of which came up last night at the candidate forum. It was really great to hear the level of interest. So this is where folks can give their direct feedback to the planning team, which will go into, it's really Scott should be talking about this. You want to talk about this, Scott?
You're doing great.
Okay, but it will go in into a consolidated format in which the rewriting of chapter 16 will start to take place. So this is one of 3 efforts to get public feedback for the rewriting of chapter 16. These open houses will take place Monday, March 11th from 5:30 to 7:30. Thursday, March 14th, 5:30 to 7:30. And Thursday, March 21st from 5:30 to 7:30. I got this information right out of the ad in the paper today, and there will be more ads in the paper before the open houses take place. We've also got it on the town website, in the newsletter, and e-blasts. So folks can come and attend and give their feedback on what they'd like to see for housing and zoning in Minturn.
Just to clarify, those are going to be taking place right here in council chambers.
Thank you. Yes. Please.
I just want to commend our planning department. I think you guys have been working on this, as we all know, for a long time, but I think that these things take the time. And so I'm just really appreciative of all the work that you guys have done in the planning and zoning. And I just encourage the public to stay with it. And it's worth doing, and it takes time. So I just wanted to.
Thanks, Terry. Yeah, we appreciate that. It's called the Minturn Forward Project. The other thing, which was an opportunity, I attended today with the Colorado Water Conservation Board and the Eagle River Coalition hosted a WRAP meeting, which is Wildfire Ready Action Plan. And this is a meeting that, again, under the guise of what was talked about last night at the Candidates Forum, is about emergency preparedness and how to address matters of hazards after an emergency comes through town. So this opportunity came before us from the Colorado Water Conservation Board is to put a WRAP plan together from which you can then go and apply for state funds and federal funds to start mitigating some of the hazardous issues we anticipate. Bell and Bridge being one, a lot of backup and collateral will happen there. Not to sound negative. So this was a very exciting meeting. I asked Hugh Fairfield Smith to attend along with Minturn since he heads up all things wildfire for Minturn. And it turns out he got a job while he was there, and Eagle Valley Wildland is now going to head up our application for the entire county and all the municipalities within. And the costs associated with that are already included in the IGA that the council approved a couple meetings ago. So that work will get underway. Along with the community wildfire protection plan. So a lot is being done on the emergency preparedness front.
So how long will it be before we actually get a test going Or is that part of this process?
A test.
Yes, where we actually test the system in a live round of emergency.
Oh, so for an evacuation plan?
Yeah.
So for evacuation planning, that would be a separate grant, so that's a very expensive activity. But we're working now on traffic counts and routes to understand, as an example, how many people are trying to get off of Pine Street at 8:30 in the morning. Like, we're trying to understand those traffic numbers. So you won't notice them around town, but we're doing traffic counting to understand our traffic numbers and the impacts of that as far as evacuation planning goes. So that work has started now, and then we will be starting further to work on getting a tabletop exercise organized, and that's through the Eagle County Sheriff's Office. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Michelle?
Just like to say thank you for applying for the grants for the congressional spending too. Much appreciated.
Fingers crossed. So I think what everyone would probably agree is the most pressing is there is a grant specifically through Congressman Negus's office. It's only offered in the House of Representatives. It's not offered in the Senate, and that's the one where we'll be applying for the water infrastructure. So we have $3 million of congressionally directed spending right now that we've applied and been approved for the water infrastructure. That money cannot be used if we want to use the CMAR process. So the federal dollars do not allow a CMAR process to take place. CMAR stands for Construction Manager at Risk. And that means you work your engineer and your contractor together to find the best prices possible for value engineering a plant. It's really efficient and a great way to go. Then I wish our federal government was watching this meeting so they would change their minds on this policy. So if we want to go that route, which seems unlikely, we would have to forego the $3 million. Our project is so small, we'll probably just keep the way that we do it with is an engineer's estimate. We go and try to get a loan and go from there.
Something to talk to Mr. Legus about, huh? Minutes and Hickenlooper staff. Yeah.
Somebody, I don't know, went to college with them, so.
High school.
High school.
That was so funny. You know a lot of people, Brian. All right, so let's see. Next, we don't have any special presentations this evening, I assume. Okay, so next item will be 10, call it 0, which is ordinance number 2, series 2024, first reading, an ordinance approving the rezoning of lot 3A South Minturn Addition subdivision from commercial to residential.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Council, good evening. Scott Hunn with the Planning Department. I am going to do my best to be brief tonight. The applicant is here to also answer any questions, Woody Woodruff. So this is a rezoning request for lot 3A. As you've hopefully read at least a little bit of the staff report, lot 3A is a lot that will be created through a minor subdivision. We've processed that minor subdivision. We're ready to approve it. That subdivision can't be approved until the zoning's in place. So we don't create a lot that doesn't conform to minimum lot size. So these two things have been tracking concurrently. We're here tonight just to talk about the rezoning request. This is for lot 3A. Lots 1, 2, and 3 of the South Minturn addition were created just a couple of years ago. And at the time, those 3 lots were zoned commercial. Subsequent to that, lot 3 was brought through for a rezoning request. Lots 1 and 2 were brought through for a rezoning request to rezone those 2 lots from commercial to residential, to allow for residential construction. That was always the intent on those. Lot 3 is a little bit different. Lot 3 spans from the Eagle River up to Highway 24. And it has currently a residential structure on it and the old Lucero's gas station. The original intent for the owner of lot 3 was to allow the residential to continue while some renovation of the gas station was to take place and turn that into an art studio. Woody can fill you in on why that's probably not happening now. I think there were several complications from the standpoint of the existing structure and how complicated and expensive it would be to actually retrofit that and renovate it. So the current plan is to subdivide lot 3 into 2 lots. zone lot 3A to residential, which would match up with the zoning around that lot to the north and to the south. And also in keeping with the community plan and the future land use map designations for that area. But also to allow lot 3B, the Lucero's gas station site, to remain commercial and allow for redevelopment in a commercial manner in the future. So I'm going to stop there. Are there any questions just on why we're here and what's being requested?
Questions from the board?
Okay,
I don't have any either.
okay. Your favorite part of my presentations is coming up next.
Okay.
Findings. I'm gonna, if you'll indulge me, I'm gonna read these into the record. And I will preface this by saying that staff and the planning commission have all made positive findings for each one of these standards. So I will be brief, and then I think Woody, if you feel like making any statements or answering any questions, you're welcome to come up too. So the first standard that the council needs to consider is consistency with the master plan, whether and to the extent to which the proposed amendment is consistent with the purposes, goals, policies, and character area zoning for the master plan. So the staff report just outlines that the future land use map identifies this property and the surrounding properties as either residential or mixed use in the future. The second standard is compatibility with surrounding uses, whether and to the extent to which the proposed amendment is compatible with existing and proposed uses surrounding the subject land and is the appropriate character area and zone district for the land, considering its consistency with the purpose and standards of the proposed zone district. So it's currently Southtown character area, commercial zone district. The neighboring properties are Southtown character area residential. We think that this fits in perfectly. Number three, that there are changed conditions, whether and to the extent to which there are changed conditions that require an amendment to modify the use, density, or intensity. My staff report just kind of outlines the fact that there has been some rezoning recently for lots 1 and 2. The original plan to keep lot 3 as commercial really doesn't work anymore for the applicant. That then is the change in condition. Number 4, the effect on the natural environment, whether and to the extent to which the proposed amendment would result in significantly adverse impacts on the natural environment, including but not limited to water, air, noise, stormwater management, wildlife habitat, vegetation, and wetlands. As a reminder, these are lot 3 and the future lots 3A and 3B are already developed. Staff's response to this was effectively, this is a downzoning. So the density and intensity of use on this portion of the lot actually will reduce. So less effect from a natural environment standpoint. Community need is the next standard, whether and to the extent to which the proposed amendment addresses a demonstrated community need. The benefit in this residential rezoning is to not only allow the existing rental property continue, thus addressing community housing needs. The future use would then also be residential. They'd have to, any redevelopment of that lot for residential purposes would have to conform with our existing setbacks and other dimensional limitations. So kind of keeping that existing use for housing needs. Number 6, development patterns, whether and to the extent to which the proposed amendment would result in a logical and orderly development pattern and not constitute spot zoning, and whether the resulting development can logically be provided with necessary public facilities and services. Again, staff finds that this fits very well with surrounding zoning. It is served currently and it does not constitute spot zoning. And last, public interest, whether and to the extent to which the area to which the proposed amendment would apply has changed or is changing to such a degree that it is in the public's interest to encourage a new use or density in the area. While the use would remain the same, again, it's currently being used for residential. This kind of addresses the issue of future land use and density in the area and compatibility. So we believe there is some public interest in approving this rezoning. With that, Planning Commission deliberated on this and heard this request on the 28th of February. They forwarded a unanimous recommendation for approval. Staff is also recommending approval. So with that, I will take any questions, or Woody, if you'd like to say anything, you're welcome to.
Well, Woody?
Woody Woodruff, 344 Eagle River Street. Minturn, pretty straightforward. But I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. If you want to know the backstory or whatever, I'm here to answer any question you have about this whole.
So starting with Brian, do you have any questions?
Any plans for redeveloping the Lucero's lot, or-
The lot, when we discovered that the building was not up to code at all. Planning this
That's
whole
right.
thing, and my engineer got up in the rafters, and he wanted to get out of there because he was afraid the whole thing was gonna come down. It just isn't a viable to rebuild that building, and we're not interested in developing anything else. But one of the owners of the other lot, the other two lots, John Alfond, came to me and said, well, would you sell it? And we said, well, we've always had the plan since the very beginning. Tommy and Lynn and I bought the whole thing together from Lucero's. We turned it into an LLC, that's who bought it, and then it was subdivided and to where it is today, but I kept the two lots together, the one at the river and the one up on the highways, because if you split them up, your taxes crazy, and we've had that experience before, so I was just gonna wait, and here I am, because it's time, and he's interested in evaluate, but you'll have to talk to him about exactly what he wants to do, but it sounds like he's got some pretty good ideas that would fit with the town, but I'm no place to speak for him. So he'll be here, he'll come when he gets his plan together and stuff.
Okay.
To that lot on the river, there is full access. Do you have that plat?
Hey, Jay, can you please, any chance you could bring up the packet, which has a photo of the plat for Woody's project, which is
And
under item F as in Frank in the packet world?
hold on.
Jay's actually getting very good at this. It's even when I put him on the spot.
Please
So,
don't do that yet. I haven't gotten it up yet.
I think probably page 73 has the one you want, where you got the new plan with.
Yeah, the new plan, which will eventually become the Mylar to do the actual subdivision once all the approvals are hopefully done.
Mhm.
But I just want to explain to you a couple of things.
Is this what we're looking for?
Yep, the next page. Oh, no, that one, it's got it. That'll show it. Let me go up there. Okay, so
can you make it bigger, Jay?
Trying.
Okay, sorry.
there you go. That's great.
Sorry.
Okay, so here's Lucero's originally. Gas station's here. The tanks are all gone. We got a letter from the state saying that it's clean. If there's any problem, it goes back to Lucero's, not to the owner, the current owner. So that's taken care of before. The things we did, when we did this whole thing, we brought in this easement for access to these three lots, these three house sites. And abandoned, there was a easement that went here and we got it, Tommy got it abandoned. This is the sewer. And so in this addition to it, we added this little easement so that you can get in here to the back of this easily. It's just the setbacks from the property line that we're designating. I also added, and this was part of the plan from the start, there's a 5-foot utility easement along Mark's lot here. And I am adding a 5-foot easement, utility easement on the other side of the line so that there's a standard 10-foot down to the sewer line and can be used for any utilities. So I think that's covered just about everything we would need. I mean, if you guys see something I'm missing, but I think then this lot is very similar to these two. And this one plays to the street. it's really nice in one sense because this is a cliff. There's a stone wall that drops, I think it drops about 15, 20 feet. So these lots are very quiet from the highway. They're very nice lots and they're building nice houses. And the gentrification of intern. So that's what we're doing. If there are any other questions about it.
I assume each lot has a tap on it now, because you have one for that.
Yeah, and there's one, I got a note from the town. Because it was one lot when the moratorium was put on, we only have one more.
That you can get, yeah.
CFEs, is that what it is?
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah. EFEs, whatever they are. One more tap. We've kept the tap on Lucero's and paying for it. We cut it off, which shut down, but we're keeping that tap, so they'll get that. And, there's one more tap floating. I can't imagine that we would want it on the residential lot, so I'm assuming it'll go to John and he'll use it for whatever he does up above. Presumably housing, but I don't know.
Okay. Anything else from the board? It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
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 Okay, there's no more input. We want to entertain a motion. Oh, yeah, public hearing. Open it up for public hearing. Any comments from the public that would like to make on this project?
No, sir. There's nobody with their hands up.
Okay, close public hearing.
Yeah, you stand up.
Oh, did you? I'm sorry. Come on up. Yeah, if you could please give me your name and address.
My name is Jim Seven. I live at 632 Main Street. I just wanted to know where this is located, these three lots.
You know where Lucero's is? Is it the abandoned gas station down there on the east side of Highway 24?
Oh, okay.
998.
left, right before you get to Battle Trading Post, that's on the right.
Oh,
Battle
okay.
Mountain
It's the
Trading.
900 block. It's the south end of the 900 block,
Oh, okay.
that old gas station.
Thank you.
Any more questions from anyone? Okay. We'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2, series 2024, an ordinance of the town of Minturn rezoning lot 3A, South Minturn additional subdivision from Southtown Character Area Commercial Zone District to Southtown Character Area Residential Zone District.
Eric seconds.
Is that you, Eric?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Motion by Gusty, second by Eric. Roll call, please.
Brian.
Eric, I.
Terry, I.
Dusty, aye.
Kate, you out there?
Kate, I. Yep, Kate, I. You can hear me?
Okay, thank you. And Earl is aye.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we did. Thanks. Okay, that's it. Rock and roll, Woody.
Thank you. You're being great. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
You know it.
Tell them to come back.
That's an ordinance. Right. So I have a second. She may or may not.
This was the-
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, Lynn back. And the next item on the agenda is the 806 Cemetery Road New Maintenance and Storage Building.
So we are going to request a continuance to a date specific on this. We received a letter from the cemetery district's attorney yesterday. Requesting that a hearing in front of the council be noticed under the land use zone as it's a quasi judicial hearing. I think that's supported by the code. And we gave them a couple of options of future dates. They emailed back about a half hour ago and said they would prefer May 1st, which is the first meeting in May. Thank you. So we are going to, again, under the provisions of the land use code, we'll get with the applicant and have the formal notice procedures undertaken. And we will submit a formal referral request to the Colorado Division of Parks and Wildlife for comment on the application based upon the matters that were discussed at the prior hearing. And we'll hear that application on May 1st.
So we'll need a motion for continuation.
I can make a motion to continue the Belden Place application, or no, wait, sorry, 806 Cemetery Road, new maintenance and storage building.
I'll second that.
Motion by Terry, second by Gusty. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And next we have the Golden Place application for additional water SFEs.
All right, I'm gonna take council back a little bit in history. Some of you were members of the council during these events, you may recall. In 2022, in 2021, Belden Place obtained a preliminary plan approval for a PUD and a subdivision for what's known as the Belden Place PUD. They then submitted applications to move that to a final PUD plan and plat. And we held hearings on that, the first and the second meetings of March in 2022. In February of 2022, Belden further made a formal request to have additional taps allocated to it for their subdivision. And as the council will recall, we implemented a moratorium in 2020 that limited the allocation of taps from the water system to the historic use plus 3 additional taps. And that gave Belden Place, I think it was 23 taps. They had, I think, 19 historic. There was a additional lot that they had purchased adjoining their property that had a tap with it, and then there were the additional 3 on top of that. Their PUD requires 43.5 SFEs, so they again submitted materials to the town. We had an action item on that request in February of 2022. The request was neither granted nor denied, rather it was simply further information was requested by the council. And we moved forward with land use hearings, the subsequent 2 meetings in March. An event that we were not made aware of at that time was that the applicant had filed litigation against the town related to a host of issues that they believed that they were wronged by, specifically relating to their assertion that they should receive additional taps for the development. The filing of litigation, the town has a provision in its code that says once litigation is filed that all land use hearings are to be suspended. They get stayed at that point. And the litigation has been in process now since March of 2022. The council entered into a settlement agreement in November of last year that provided a path forward for settling the litigation, whereby Belden's request for additional taps would be brought back before the council, and that they would have an opportunity to present evidence as to why the council should grant additional taps for their development. As the council is aware, the Minturn North subdivision has recently completed their land use approvals, and based upon the final plat that was approved and actually was recorded on Monday, They only needed, they have 39 lots and they have requested to reserve up to 54 SFEs of service for potentially larger houses. So, you know, you can have more than one SFE on a particular lot. And that leaves of these, in the original moratorium where the town allocated kind of the final 70 SFEs of water service to Minturn North, that leaves 16 SFEs of water service now available. And so in front of you tonight is a request, a renewed request by Battle Mountain, tracking, I'm sorry, by Belden, thank you, by Belden, tracking back to their request in February of 2022 to have additional taps allocated to it. The moratorium in 2022 that was put in place in 2020 and effective in 2022 had the following provision. It had a provision that a person or an entity could make a request to council for the allocation of additional SFEs when that the moratorium was readopted in 2023, that provision was taken out. So requests to have additional SFEs allocated to a specific development that were not made prior to the adoption of the 2023 moratorium, you can no longer request additional SFEs from the town. But because Belden had made their request in February of 2022 under the prior moratorium, and that request was stayed pursuant to the town code based upon the litigation, they can come forward and ask for an allocation of the 16 SFEs. I would note that there is in the packet a letter from Stovall and Associates. Mr. Stovall is with us today to answer questions on behalf of the applicant that provides a basis for why they believe it is in the town's best interest to allocate the 16 SFEs to their development. I would highlight that because that development is fairly dense and includes multi-story, multifamily housing. The use of one SFE, for example, for a duplex or a triplex lot or for a unit in the multi-story, multifamily housing does not or will not use the full amount of irrigation water that otherwise could be used under getting a tap into the water system. Under your water regulations, each SFE comes with the right to use up to 2,000 square feet per SFE for irrigation, 2,000 square feet of irrigation. The Belden Place development uses substantially less water than that because they have substantially less irrigation being implemented as part of the development. So with that, I think the applicant, who certainly can make comments, believes that this is a wise use of water. It will allow for the facilitation of diverse housing options in Minturn. A final plat can be adopted relatively quickly, which will allow this development to get underway and for housing to be created. And that housing will have the net effect of having less water demand on the town's limited water system than would, say, single family or duplex lots. I would, as our planner, recommend that you make certain findings if the council is disposed to grant this application. Those findings would be, and I'm happy to repeat them again after we've heard from the applicant and had public comment, but that there are 16 SFEs of service available that are not being used by the Minturn North development. That Belden Place submitted a request to the town prior to the adoption of the 2023 amended moratorium to have additional taps allocated for that development. That the Belden development will not use the full amount of water that presumptively could be used with those 16 SFEs because the lots are smaller and there's going to be less irrigation on the property. That the Belden development will create more housing with less water use than single-family development lots. And that it's in the best interest of the town to allocate the 16 SFEs to Belden. I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, we'll invite Mr. Stovall to come up and answer any questions or provide any information he desires on behalf of his client. But before that happens, if you have some questions, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, so if you want to start with questions for Mike, we're going to do the Resolution 41 and we'll use our new clock. We'll each have up to 5 minutes. And we'll go around and around to make sure everybody has everything they need to say or ask done. Okay, so Brian, do you have any questions of Mike?
Yeah, well, first, just some background. I think the plan, other developments should look at the, limited consumptive use of irrigation as kind of like a bar for development around here. But I think this kind of leads to like why we need to rework our SFE definition pretty quickly and urgently is because, this situation is creating this kind of incentive for them to cut a triplex out of the plan, which a triplex with no consumptive irrigation is like, adding people to the debt service, adding free accounts is like, that's what the town needs to build a new water plant, pay for it. And so with the way that these incentives are set up, and especially if like point 11 in the contract says there's the ability to further scale down the development if they don't get further SFEs from Minturn North. And I'd imagine it would become most likely for them under the current incentives to get rid of more triplexes because that's the easiest way to get rid of SFEs. So it seems like we've got this kind of like backwards incentive where we've got this development that I think looks pretty good on paper. I wasn't here for the first full run through the plan. And we're gonna, maybe grant them the leftover SFEs, but they're gonna be cutting out some of the housing that is most needed by the community first, which is the triplexes, which are more affordable, and swapping those out for a single family or kind of getting rid of those. So that's just my take on it. And I was wondering if there's any scenario where we could rework point 11 where if they do have to scale down further, like can we keep the triplexes and get rid of the single family lots? But maybe that's a question for the applicant.
I think that's something you can run by the applicant, and then we can talk about that further after public comments happen.
Yeah.
Well, I'm basically with Brian on this issue. I think this does provide more locals housing. And what I'm taken with is the fact that most of the water that's being consumed, like I don't know, 90% or so, is outdoor use. And by restricting the amount of outdoor use water, we can have incredible water savings. And I'm wondering, and this goes along with what Brian was saying, I'm wondering if we couldn't come up with a standard where you reduce the 2,000 square feet of irrigable space, and a standard that promotes triplexes, and would allow us to be have not such an absolute water moratorium, but allow us to get around that a little bit, because that seems to me a win-win for the town and seems to represent what people in the town really want. And if done properly, it seems to me it could result in there not being any increased water consumption in town.
Thank you, Lynn. Eric?
No, no questions for Mike. I was on council when the first application came through, so very familiar with this project.
Rusty?
I have one question. I don't remember discussing this. Maybe we did, and it's just been a while and I forgot it, but it's says pretty much that we're allowing 39 SFEs to build, but there's a 7-year window to hopefully obtain 3 SFEs if water comes available. And I don't kind of remember discussing that. I thought we discussed, being able to get the triplex out and then replacing it with one single family home and then an ADU to get the SFE count to 39.
Yeah, the settlement agreement. Paragraph 11 provides that the parties acknowledge and agree that even by replacing the triplex on lots 12, 13, 14 with a single family unit and ADU as described, Belden Place may still be short SFEs to fully build out the project as configured for a period of 7 years from the effective date if additional SFEs do not become available for Belden so it can fully build out the project. The miners may eliminate or reconfigure lots at that time. And I guess what I would say is that, we certainly are working on trying to find solutions to the water situation, which hopefully will create additional SFEs so that this development can be built out based upon an amended density that does combine those triplex lots into one. But that there are other triplex lots within the subdivision and other multi-story multifamily units that will also be part of the subdivision. I think what that provision contemplated was so that they'll still be 3.5 SFEs short of full build out. Even with getting the 16 SFEs, that if after 7 years, they still have 2 or 3 lots that they just can't, you can't pull a building permit unless there's water available, that they would have the right to come in at that time and say, hey, here's our alternative proposal for how we want to use this land.
So they would just leave that parcel till the last end is probably what the plan would be.
They're going to have to, because there will be at least 3 lots that don't have the right to build because there isn't water allocated for it.
And hopefully we have something settled by then, but if we don't, we're not on the hook, are we, the way this is stated? Okay.
No, I mean, it would be, you would be amending another land use approval, so they would have to come through a notice land use process, and they would have to make the case to the planning commission and then to this council that the changes they want to make are in the best interest of the town.
Thank you. I do have one more, but you can come back to me.
Go ahead. 4 minutes.
Oh, okay. There's a lot in there with Midtown Village. And are we okay with the timing as far as when they put an application in that? We're okay on that. All right.
Well, let me add a little context
All right.
to that, because in your packet as part of this agenda item is a letter from the Midtown Village developer saying, hey, we'd like to be considered for these 16 taps. And the town, it wasn't through me because at the time I was having some medical challenges, but through Rob Marsh, who's part of the firm that's represented us in the Battle Mountain case, responded back and said, well, there's a salient difference between Midtown Village and between Belden Place, and that is that before the 2023 moratorium was put into effect, which eliminated the ability to ask for more taps, Belden came in and asked for more taps. They did a whole presentation to this council, and materials were submitted. And that while the Midtown Village development submitted a land use application in the form of a conceptual plan before that, that's a land use application. That's not a utility application. The request to get more taps, that's really a utility matter. And so as Mr. Marsh, the attorney who responded to Midtown Village indicated, he's like, well, just looking at this, if you had submitted a formal request for more taps prior to the adoption of the amended 2023 moratorium, you might have had a leg to stand on to say, we'd like these taps as opposed to them going to Belden, but you didn't. And the 2023 moratorium is what now governs the Midtown Village development. So we feel very comfortable that that distinction means that essentially there's a pool of one party that can currently apply for additional taps under the moratorium, and that's because Belden made this request before the 2023 moratorium was put into place, and they're the only entity that ever submitted such a request.
Great, thanks, Mike.
Mike, I'm interested in the math and getting the extra SFEs by using common area space only being irrigated. I think probably the Minturn townhomes was probably the only thing I can think of where that would have been used, except for the enclave way back then. But I'm curious, is that part of our code? Because I wasn't on the council of that.
And I appreciate you asking this question. So the code is clear that for each dwelling unit, you need one SFE. Except for ADUs, which under the code are a half of an SFE. And the definition of an SFE then allows you to irrigate up to 2,000 feet of lawn and garden. We do not, under the current code, look at things on kind of a net balance basis, like, oh, well, you're using less irrigation water, therefore, under the code, you're entitled to get more SFEs. And there's some reasons for that, and one of which is that because the 2,000 square foot limitation was put into place, I don't know, 6-7 years ago, we have lots in Minturn that only have one SFE that have more than 2,000 square feet of lawn and garden because they developed at a time that there wasn't a limitation. And we have some lots that are less. And so on the average, the amount of irrigation that the town allows to be used across all these different kinds of lots, we assume is kind of netting out at about 2,000 square feet. But the code doesn't allow you currently to come in and say, hey, I'm proposing a very dense development. There will be only half of the irrigation that we otherwise could make under the definition of an SFE. Therefore, we'd like more taps. Rather, what's happening here is the prior moratorium provided an opportunity for a developer to come in and say, we'd like to make the case for more taps. You're hearing that application based upon the right that was memorialized in the prior moratorium. It's evidence that this is a water-wise development that they're going to use less than the 39 SFE times 2,000 square feet. But that is not necessarily the basis by which you would be granting the application. And if that didn't make sense, please tell me.
I had to tell you say that's not why we would not grant it. So we're basically doing something that's not in the code, but it's a common sense thing to do.
No, again, you are doing what's allowed in the code, which is to say that the development proposed by Belden Place actually requests, it needs 42 or 42 SFEs. Based upon the definition that they need one SFE for each unit that they're going to develop.
Mm-hmm.
They're coming and asking for the allocation of this additional 16 SFEs based upon the fact that they previously made the request And as evidence to support why you might grant that application, they're proposing a water-wise development. They will use less irrigation water than other developments would use.
And so under the water wise, how, I don't know if you know this off the top, how much square footage of your irrigation?
That is in the developer's memo, I believe. Let me see here.
Or about the development?
So
we could irritate 78, this is Jim Sobel.
Yes.
And so Brian's indicated you could irritate up to 78,000 square feet. We're using basically 43,000 square feet, approximately 35,000 square feet is not going to be used.
Okay.
So again, I want to stress that that is a basis to support granting the application, but that is not the basis that they automatically get more SFVs simply because they're using less irrigation water. It's again, it's evidence in support of their application, but it's not why we would be allocating the SFVs to them. They don't have the right to more SFVs simply because they're irrigating less under the current code.
But they are getting more SFVs.
If you grant this application.
But if we went by the current code. Okay, I'm just trying to make sure I'm clear on this. The current code, each unit that's under 3,000 square feet is one SFV. And so, and there's a total of 39.
There is a total of 42.5
42.5, of which we're just asking for an additional 16.
Yeah. And the reason why there's a slightly larger number than the number of lots that they're creating is because, first of all, there's this multifamily structure that has a defined number of units that'll be associated with it. And that they think on 2 of the lots, there might be houses that are greater than 3,000 square feet. In which case they would require 2 SFVs for that lot because of the larger house size.
Okay, so that's gonna be held in abeyance just to see if our water supply kicks in. Okay, now I get it. Okay, and then finally, I assume that that the irrigation water would be on its own meter.
I actually, for irrigation occurring on the single family duplex and triplex lots would be on the meter of the landowner. Then I assume there will be kind of a master meter for there's a common area and then where the apartment complex is that would regulate the water usage for those areas.
Okay. Okay, any more questions for Mike before we, okay, do we have any questions for Jim? Brian?
Well, I guess.
And I think, if I remember correctly, is there a work session tomorrow?
There is not a work session.
Oh, I thought
This
mine was.
is the.
No, I thought as if we go forward, I thought Brian had mentioned there's a work session coming up on the PUD.
There will be a further hearing on, because we're going to need to amend the PUD guide and the plat to correspond with the consolidation of the 3 lots into 1 lot. And that will be held at a subsequent time.
Jim, the meeting tomorrow is a pre-application meeting.
Oh, pre-application, okay. I know there's something coming up. I was gonna say, as far as I know, the only triplex being removed was the triplex that's proposed to be removed for the replacement of the single family with the ADU. I've not heard anybody discuss otherwise. Now, Brian's been kind of heading this up for the office and working with Mike, but to the best of my knowledge, I've never heard anything other than that.
Hang on, I forgot about Kate. Kate, did you have a question?
Hold on just a second. Having trouble with Kate's connection. And I do have one person in the audience with their hand up, Christine Collins.
Well, that'll be for the public hearing, so we'll wait for that. Okay, so while we're waiting for Kate to reconnect, Brian, did you have anything else for Jim?
Yeah, sorry, I wanted to clarify. I didn't say that I saw that other triplex was gonna be removed. I was just commenting in general that 2011, the right to kind of start moving down lots, say Minter North doesn't pass on, or we don't find the additional ones. It would incentivize to remove those, it seems. So that's what I was just wondering about. It would be great if they started with single families. I guess. Yeah, that's really the only kind of question I had on that.
And Brian, again, just state again, if they were to reconfigure lots based upon the non-availability of water service in the future, that comes back to you. So.
Can I ask a question to Mike?
Yeah, go ahead, Kate.
Can you hear me? Kind of to Brian's earlier or current point, like it seems that we're at a point in time where we're aware of a very finite resource that we've also perhaps identified is not most usefully defined in a way that will best serve the town. Is there an opportunity for us to sort of pause and say, can we rework how we define an SFB that best serves the town while we know this is a very limited finite resource, and then revisit this? Or are we just sort of stuck with what we have as an SFB indefinitely until something else happens?
I guess I have two responses to that. One is that the town did enter into a settlement agreement with Belden back in November that contemplated that they would bring this application to you or bring it back because it was already presented. And while you are not bound one way or the other as to how you vote, this is a quasi judicial matter. It is, you're free to vote whatever way you feel the evidence suggests you should. We have the obligation to have this hearing now. And then the second part of your question, Kate, is about adjusting the definition of an SFE. And I would say that has to be done in close coordination with our town water attorney and our town water engineer, because the definition of an SFE has implications for how our water rights are administered. And we would not want to make a change to definitions that could adversely affect the town's water rights. And I'm not suggesting that's necessarily the case, but we would need to go through the process of consulting with them as to what types of changes we can and cannot make.
Okay, that is helpful. Although, I mean, I understand the urgency, I guess, around this hearing, but it seems as though if we could collectively, within the parameters that we have on water rates and all the other things, look at a way that acknowledges the developer intending to make a water smart development and perhaps is beneficial to them and other developers, like could we continue this and see if that's even a possibility? Like if they're waiting on SFBs for 7 years that may or may not come, or we wait another 60, 90 days, whatever that takes, to say, like, maybe if we relook at this in a different way, those will be there. Does that make sense? That may not even been a full sentence.
Yeah, I think that, so again, if the 16 SFEs are granted to this development, they will only be 2 or 3 SFEs shy of full build out. They will be able to record a final plat rather quickly and get moving forward with their development. I mean, this is housing that literally could start to happen this be constructed this year. And again, with the settlement agreement and the provisions that said we would bring this application to council, I guess you could choose to continue it, but I think the good faith effort is that we are having this hearing today. We're going to make a decision, and whatever that decision is, the developer will move forward either with amending the plat and the PUD to note this little change in the lot configuration, or we go back to litigation. Those are the two options. So I don't think a continuance really does much for the town in this situation. And if our water attorney and water engineer believed that there was a way to make more water available to other developments by redefining the definition of an SFE, that is something that probably isn't going to happen quickly. Those things take time. Michelle reminded me that we actually had a conversation, or she had a conversation with our water attorney and water engineer about making amendments to the utility code, including the definition of SFE. And they said that so long as that we currently have a pending water court case involving diversion points around Cross Creek, and that so long as that case is pending, we should not be changing the code. So.
Anything else, Kate,
Okay.
right now?
No, I wouldn't, yeah.
We'll go
I
around
guess
you.
my brain is thinking of like, maybe if we didn't change the definition of an SFE, but if we understood differently, like what the requirement was for a place that maybe didn't irrigate. And we just took enough time to understand that, and suddenly the developer has all that they need to build out the full project. Like that would be more beneficial to our town than to just say, well, here we are, we have this definition that's not serve us entirely well, like, but we're moving forward. I mean, I understand both sides, so that's all I'll say.
I agree. I kind of agree with you, Kate, but I think we have to go through a process for that. But when schedule allows, I think that makes sense to do if for the council agree. Anyway, moving on. Lynn, did you have any?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate, I'm in favor of this, the settlement agreement and granting the necessary SFEs. But I do feel that it's worth going back, and particularly because this water moratorium, I am concerned is going to continue for a while. I mean, even if we voted tomorrow to build and to pay for a water membrane plant, and somehow came up with the money to get Eagle River water to treat the Eagle River water and got those rights, that even with all that, it's going to be years before this is my fear, it's going to be years before we get more SFEs. And there are people suffering right now, one developer in particular being denied on a fairly technical basis. And I just think that the SFEs as defined currently makes sense if water consumption was roughly equivalent to bathrooms and kitchens. But given that it's really not so much inside use, but it's outside use that really makes all the world of difference. It seems to me that there should be a different standard for multi-units and with less outdoor space, and for people who are willing to do without outdoor irrigation. And that would give us the ability to gives more SFEs to people who need it. And or give more water to people who need it. So I would be in favor of going back and looking at the code and trying to see if we can do something that doesn't negatively impact our legal water rights, but that more it's is a little bit fairer.
Okay, Eric? Rusty?
I don't have anything else.
Okay. Kate, do you have anything else for us?
No.
Okay. Okay, at this time, I'll open it up for public hearing. Is there anyone out there? Please come up and please give your name and address, please.
My name is Lindsay Webb. I live 642 Main Street. Came to Vale in the early 60s. Went to work, retired here in 96. Minturn has always been a extraordinary special place. What I think I heard is that the water issue is beginning to dictate style. And what I think I heard is that with more density, we should go ahead because it goes into the buildings as opposed to the land. I may have not read this correctly, but I know it's a long process. I don't know where I am in the process. But I think we have to, we have to think about what is all this going to look like. So I'm assuming that this discussion, and we're in the weeds here, the discussion about the specificity of the water is important, and I'm sure it'll be solved. But I'm hoping, because I guess I got triggered by the notion of high density. I hope we are also factoring in what all this stuff looks like. And I'm assuming that you guys have seen designs and pictures, and it looks beautiful, and it's going to add to the community, and it'll be in keeping with the traditions of the town and so forth and so on. And that's been solved first. And now we're talking about some specific water issues. So that's a naive comment, but I also would like to thank all you guys because you're sitting here doing this. And I'm stunned that there's nobody here in the audience except a few people. Must be a hell of a tough task. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And just quickly, yeah, this process happened 2 years ago. And was actually approved, and then it got halted for litigation reasons. It was supported at the time, and so we've gone through a due diligence on it. We're going to have a lot of talk going on because it's not just water; it's how much the water costs. One thing to solve that is to grow a little bit, and there's also affordability. We'd like to have locals living here, and that's important to us. And so anything that we can do to hold out the chance that we can actually get locals affording to live in our town and own their own place is the other side of that. And to me, sometimes it was, especially with the way they designed their site, and I think it leaves a lot more open space because you kind of pushed everything into a smaller area. So there's a lot of things that I'd be happy to talk with you about.
So you guys are happy with the aesthetics?
Yeah, I think it was all appreciated. Yeah. And so are we done with comments?
Jay said there was.
Jay, did you have somebody on Zoom land?
I do have one. Hold on just a second.
Okay.
Christine, you can speak now.
Okay, Christine, could you please give me your name and address?
She has her hand up and her mic on, but she's not speaking. Christine Collins, you can go ahead and speak now if you're.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Can you hear me now?
We sure can.
Hi, this is Christine Collins at 650 Main Street. If you're limited to 16 SFEs and given some of the conversation around the water crisis, wouldn't you want to consider holding a few of those back? As you guys were talking, it's going to take some time to figure out a solution. would it be better to hold some of those back and not give them all the SFEs?
Well, I'll tell you this, this has been a situation where we had actually, this has got quite a history. This project has quite a history about it, and it was one that was looked at as a very positive project back 2 or 3 years ago. And then because they couldn't get them, they entered into litigation, which kind of set things back a long time. So with the extra SFEs that were available from Intern North, because they didn't need as much as we had earlier allotted for their use, that was available. And thus we went through a settlement negotiations with them, because now that we had a few, they were really the first in line and the longest waiting for this water. This is not the normal way we do things, but it was just kind of fell out that way. And so this is a resolution that allows this project to move forward and in a quick manner. We will be continually working. We're actually spending most of our time getting this water situation under control and moving forward in a positive direction. And we hope to be able to find some efficiencies and lower costs so that we can move forward the way we want to. That's kind of my point of view on it. I don't know if anybody wishes to, if anybody disagrees.
Thank you.
So that's the reasoning, Christine.
Yeah, totally understand, Mayor. Thank you. I just want to, the only thing I'd add is the facts have changed, with the water situation over the last, because 2 years have passed. I just want to make sure you guys aren't hamstringing you and the community by not keeping something back. And that's all I'll say, but I appreciate you taking my comment.
Thank you, Christine.
Mr. Mayor, if I can add to Christine's comment, because she
Please.
makes a very good point. And moving forward with the moratorium, and this will be coming out in an upcoming newsletter, but section 3 of the moratorium is specific to adjoining lots owned by the same property owner at the time of 2020. And the town will be addressing those whereby when it's needed on a first come, first served basis. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well.
I would also, so again, the approval from Intern North holds back 15 SFEs of service for larger houses. They have a 2-year window to take advantage of that. And if after 2 years, they've only used 5 of those additional SFEs, there will be 10 additional SFEs that are available for use.
Okay. So we'll close the public hearing.
I think she wanted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please come forward. Yeah. Please give your name and address.
I'm Bev Christensen and I live at 1207 Main Street. I appreciate all you're doing about our water. I think our good Lord is doing a better job than you are. I really wanted teachers and workers to be able to live in Minturn and keep our community the way it was. I came here in 1965. We chose Minturn over Vail because we wanted a community for our children. The schools were here and the grocery store was here and the post office was here. We were a community. And I'm just pleading with you in what you're doing to think about the people we've lost, the teachers we've lost, the workers we've lost, the wonderful people who can't ever afford Vail, or afford even Avon now. And I'm sorry, but I couldn't afford North Minturn. I think we have to be realistic about what people can really afford. And I miss my neighbors. And I'm tired of looking at that hole. I'm tired of waiting. Because I don't have a whole many more years to wait. Please. Be like Solomon and ask the Lord for wisdom on what you're doing. Because you're affecting people's lives. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there any more comment from the public?
There's nobody with their hand up in the audience.
Okay. So close the public hearing. Any more discussion from council? Okay, shall we? Okay, with that, what are we looking for with this?
It would be a motion to either approve the request to grant the additional taps, the 16 taps to Belden, or to deny the request, if the application, or I'm sorry, if the motion is to approve the request, I would ask that you include the findings that I discussed, which I can reread if I can find them in my own notes. If you would, or you can just say to incorporate the findings as read by the town attorney as part of the staff report.
Excuse me, Mike, if I may, could I read them out because then you can correct me?
Oh, thank you, Jay. That would be great.
The first one was findings for the 16 SFEs available from Minturn North. They applied prior to the second moratorium, and I'll make these sound better when we finish it, but they will use less water due to size of lots and density. They will create more housing with less housing than single-family homes, with less use than single-family homes. And it is in the best interest of the town to grant this request.
Sounds consistent with what I had in my notes.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve resolution number 32, series 2023. Resolution authorizing the mayor of the town of Minter to sign a settlement agreement.
No,
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 wrong
no,
one.
no.
Going downward.
We didn't, that was to approve the settlement agreement. So we didn't have
Oh,
a
gotcha.
formal resolution, rather this is a simple voice vote.
Oh, gotcha.
So you would make a motion to approve the allocation of 16 SFEs to the Belden Place development, subject to the findings as read by the town clerk.
Make a motion to approve the 16 SFEs, subject to the conditions read by the town.
And I second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Brian and a second by Lynn. Roll call, please.
Lynn, I.
Eric, I.
Dusty, I.
Earl, I.
Kate, I.
And Kate, I. Okay, the motion passes. And you have your SFEs. Let's take a recess. Okay, we've already got ordinance number 1 done, right? Yep, okay. We're now on resolution number 11, series 2024, resolution extending the approval of period for the Battle North and Minturn settlement agreement.
Mr. Mayor, I think the next item is ordinance number 1.
Yes, thank you. I apologize, but that's what I have.
Oh, okay.
Second reading for ordinance 1.
Okay. Okay, ordinance number 1, series 2024, second reading, and ordinance amending provisions contained in chapter 13 Utilities Code, chapter 16 zoning code, chapter 17 subdivision code, and chapter 18 building code of the Minturn Municipal Code.
Okay. At our last hearing, where first reading occurred on this ordinance, we gave a pretty lengthy description of what the various code provisions were and why they were being considered for implementation. Unless someone really wants to hear that again, I'm going to forego that portion and just focus on the changes that have been made since the last hearing. At the last hearing, there was a comment made about gas stations. We have changed gas stations from a use by right to a conditional use, meaning that for a gas station to go in at Bolts Lake, they would have to come in and have a full blown application in front of this council to determine if that's the right use at the right location. So that has been changed. The other issue that was brought up was whether or not a club should be a use by right in the mixed use zone district. I'll let Tim kind of address what their vision of a club is. But we left that language in the use table. The definition of a club kind of is specific to nonprofits, which we generally would think of as, I don't know, an Elks Lodge or the Garden Club or something like that. But under federal law, it probably also includes churches. And there was a question about, does that create a zoning issue out in Bolts Lake? And I think the answer is no, because a church would be, if a church were to buy property in the mixed use zone district at Battle Mountain and come forward with an application to build, they would have to comply with the same parking and landscaping and all the other requirements as any other nonprofit. And just like the Elks Club has a big additional usage on Friday nights, church has additional use on Sunday. It's not really all that different of a use, and our code already contemplates how to evaluate and mitigate land use issues surrounding those types of uses. So we did not change club as being a use by right in the use table. And frankly, those are the only two changes, or the one change that was made and the other change that we talked about and we didn't make. So I'm happy to answer questions. Tim's here on behalf of the applicant. He can provide additional context if you have any questions.
Hey, Tim.
Good evening.
Okay. So anything you want to say before we start asking questions?
No, it just, first of all, Tim McGuire, 164 Railroad Ave. To Mike's point, the club use we had been thinking was like a homeowners association or a homeowners club, but there's nothing definitively planned, but we were happy with whatever change worked, and this seemed to work fine.
Okay. Going down the line, Brian, you got anything?
No.
Lynn?
I have one comment about the first paragraph of the March 15th memo. Is that appropriate here?
Sure.
I'm thinking that we should reference that the litigation arose from the annexation agreements. And I'm just thinking, I just would feel more comfortable if that was in there in the event that anything should happen and we end up in court again.
Okay. The ordinance that is in front of you does make reference, I thought, to the litigation. So that ordinance doesn't specifically say why we got into the litigation. If you felt that was important, we could add a whereas clause to the ordinance that discussed that the town of Battle Mountain initiated litigation and claims arising out of the approvals that were granted in 2008, including alleged breaches of the annexation agreement and the water service agreement.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
And Jay, hopefully you and I will put that in, but if the motion is to approve subject to an additional whereas clause.
Thank you.
Eric, you got any? Yeah, either. So this up for the public hearing. Anybody out there, Jay?
There are no people with their hands raised.
Okay, I'm sorry. I keep forgetting you're here.
I've got nothing.
Okay. Okay, we'll close the public hearing. There's no more discussion. We can go to the motion.
I move to approve Town of Minturn ordinance number 01 series 2024. An ordinance of the Town of Minturn, Colorado, amending chapter 13 utilities code, chapter 16 zoning code, charter 17 subdivision code, and charter 18 building code of the Minturn municipal code, subject to the small change that we discussed.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Lynn, second by Gusty. Roll call please.
Brian, aye.
Eric, I.
Very, I.
Dusty, aye.
Earl, aye.
Kate, I.
And Kate's vote. Okay.
If I could be clarifying, Lynn, those are chapter, not charter. And I thought I heard charter. I want to make sure that we're modifying the chapters in the municipal code, not the charter itself.
The ordinance titled it state chapter, not charter, so.
Okay. Okay, next we have Resolution 11, Series 2024, a resolution extending the approval period for the Battle North and Minturn Settlement Agreement.
Mr. Mayor, again, we're joined by Tim McGuire representing Battle Mountain. The settlement agreement that was entered into in September of last year did contain some deadlines by which applications would be processed and kind of an outside date that the parties could terminate if things had not happened by that outside date. Things have taken slightly more time than was contemplated in the settlement agreement. Part of that has to do with my health issues and just not being able to get to everything at once. But we believe that we can in fact get all of the applications processed by June 20th, which would be the day after the second council meeting in June, with an outside termination date of July 18th. And before you is a resolution approving an amendment to the settlement agreement that simply implements those timelines.
Brian, you got any questions on this? No, pretty straightforward. Lynn, Eric.
Timeline's good for you guys, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I just want to thank, Mike and staff for all their work. It's been a lot of work and we knew it was an aggressive date going into it. And we're actually really close, so I think we'll probably beat that June 20th date, hopefully, but yeah.
Kate, any questions?
No.
So, Mr. Mayor, while this is not a public hearing, as a resolution, you can take public comment if you desire to.
Did Kate say no?
She said no, yeah.
Kate said
Oh,
no.
okay, I'm sorry. I was, Okay, well. So. Jay, anybody out there in Zoom land? Got a hand?
There's nobody with their hand raised.
Okay, all right, so. Any idea, Michelle, of where are we at with due diligence? You think maybe June's possible to have that behind us?
Yes, the dates that Mike outlined and that Battle Mountain has agreed to, we feel are reasonable for us to complete the rest of our work. We are almost complete with the appraisal process for the work to be done on that front. The town has undertaken the work for title insurance on the parcels. Some parcels to be conveyed immediately, other parcels to be conveyed upon completion of remediation work and delisting. So that work is underway as well. They feel that they can have their work done prior to the dates that Mike has identified. The EPA and CDPHE has just provided via email their first draft of the comfort letter. So we continue, and that's Polly Jessen on the environmental work that's been doing that on our behalf. She's been great. And actually we have a follow-up call Friday morning with EPA and CDPHE. So that work continues to move forward.
Okay.
So all of the things on those fronts have been steadily moving along. It's just a lot. And, you know, bandwidth, like Mike has said, has been difficult, but everybody, I have to say, from my perspective, has worked very well together on both sides of the proverbial aisle, I guess, to try to get this to the finish line for both entities. So we remain optimistic, and if we for any reason something should occur, you know, we will come back to you, but everyone's working very hard to maintain these dates. We were, I think, all disappointed that we didn't get to the first set of dates, but like Tim said, we knew it was rather aggressive.
Right. So, no one out there, any more questions, any more discussion? If not, we take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 11, series 2024, a resolution authorizing the mayor of the town of Minturn to sign an amended to a settlement agreement between the Battle Mountain entities and the town of Minturn, extending their approvals period and settlement agreement terms.
Brian, thanks.
Motion by Gusty and a second by Brian. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. That is done. Next, we have ordinance number 2, series 2024. First reading, an ordinance approving the rezoning, no, never mind, we've already done. Next, we're going on to the discussion items.
Resolution 12.
Resolution 12.
Yeah, okay. I'm a mess. Resolution 12, 2024, a resolution terminating the 2008 Battle North. Parentheses again, PUD preliminary plan.
So as part of the ordinance number 1, which was approved on second reading, you implemented zoning for the Battle Mountain property. 4 zone districts were created, a residential zone district, a mixed use zone district, an open space zone district, and then a holding zone, which is for property that the town is going to receive. Now that we have adopted new zoning for Battle's property around Bolts Lake, we need to terminate the prior zoning that was put into place. And specifically, Battle had processed a PUD and a preliminary subdivision plat back in 2008. Neither of those made their way to final. They were both preliminary documents, but just to make sure the record is clear, we want a resolution noting that those documents are terminated and that the zoning you just approved is in fact the zoning for the property. So that's what this resolution does. It's might potentially be recorded. I think it probably will end up being recorded in the chain of title. Happy to answer any questions.
I think that's
I
a
have a
whole
question.
subject. Go ahead.
I just had a question, reading this, it said that the 08 planned unit development plan includes zoning. That allows for reservoir uses on that land, did that go to final PUD? And, because how long does our PUD last?
Thank you for bringing that up. So there's a legal description attached to this resolution that has everything except the reservoir parcel in it. And the reason is that PUD guide that was adopted back in 2008 had specific language related to reservoir uses. And that is going to continue to apply to the parcel that ERWSD purchased a couple of years ago. So that's a good catch, Terry. This terminates the prior PUD as to everything except the reservoir parcel.
So that'll have to come before us for a final PUD.
No, that is zoned. That's in our code.
It's
Yeah, there's only a few allowed uses. One of them was to maintain the environmental protections. In reservoir uses were another.
Okay.
But that's all that it allowed. To get to other uses, we would have had to approve the final PUD, which never happened.
Okay.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Because if you look at section or chapter 16 of the code, there actually there's not the lengthy PUD guide in there, but there is these temporary uses or these minorly allowed uses that were allowed to happen: hunting, forestry, and the construction of a reservoir, I think are the ones that come to my mind. And those will continue to apply to the reservoir parcel.
So Tim, just a
Didn't know we
quick,
had to do any work on
just a quick question. What are the, what's the next work? What's your process as far as the progression of your checklist going forward with the town
For the settlement or post-settlement?
for the settlement?
So the next item on the list, well, there's 3 items. We have submitted the disconnection application that's in Scott's hands right now. We will, within the next week, submit the exemption plat, which will create the parcels, and that's an administrative item that Scott will review with the town engineer and approve. And then I think the final one is the development agreement.
So the development agreement, and then we're going to hear a presentation tonight on Metro districts.
Yeah.
And there will then be a formal application to consider the formation of Metro districts and the adoption of service plans. So it's really those 4 things. Yeah.
So then, with this work to be done, is all that work, or is the goal to get everything done and approved? And then and wait, or do you want to wait for the due diligence for some of this?
Well, I think they'll probably all have to come together because the town wouldn't sign the agreement until their due diligence is complete. So I think they're gonna just all come together. So really the only things that have to come before council again would be the development agreement, which is an ordinance which would require 2 readings. And the Metro district, which would be a resolution with 1 reading. But at the time of the development agreement, I would think the town would want all their due diligence complete, so they're ready to sign off on it. We should discuss that and not.
I guess that's the mechanics. Are you gonna have all this stuff done and ready to come in and get it?
They largely have.
It's all done,
It's-
really.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, passing the second ordinance tonight puts the zoning in place, again, subject to everything else coming.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, they have provided us with most of the materials that we need to complete those 4 items. And the town's in the process of reviewing and commenting on those in different stages, as well as we wanted to have this discussion item about the metropolitan districts with the council to get your feedback, which we then can use to further our dialogue back and forth over that topic.
You have a motion on resolution 12?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 12, series 2024, resolution terminating the planned unit development preliminary plan and Battle Mountain PUD guide, resolution number 18-2008.
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion by Eric, second by Lynn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right.
Excuse me, sir, we did not hear from Kate. If Kate can sign in.
Kate, did you say aye?
I did say aye. I think I didn't unmute.
Okay. Okay, now we have the Metro District. This is the discussion item only.
Yeah, I'm gonna speak very little as part of this dialogue, other than to say that, you know, we had a work session a couple months ago, if my memory serves me well, discussing Metro District issues. We did that in the context of looking at a potential draft ordinance that the town might adopt to regulate metropolitan district formation and governance within the town's jurisdiction. We have drafted that ordinance, which we can bring up at an appropriate time with you. That ordinance is not necessary to consider applications from Battle Mountain, because frankly, Battle Mountain or the adoption of service plans and allowance for the formation of metro districts is really in the discretion of the town council. And so in our discussions with Battle Mountain, we have provided them with that draft. They are aware of kind of the parameters with which we're thinking we would want metro districts to operate and be regulated, and they have pretty much incorporated those provisions into the draft documents that they provided to the town. So we're joined today. We've got Tim obviously in the audience. We've got Bill and Kayleigh, who is a specialist in metro district formation, working on behalf of Battle Mountain to provide kind of a dialogue with the council about what Battle Mountain is thinking of doing with respect to metro district formations and what they would do and what they would finance and how they would operate. And the goal of today's meeting really is for them to be able to present what they're thinking of coming to the town with, and to gauge your feedback so that if there are changes we need to be implementing, we have time to do that. So I'm happy to chime in after the presentations have been made, but really the expert in the room on this topic is Bill, and I guess we'll turn the time over to him.
Welcome, Bill. You have the floor.
Welcome. Nice to be here again. Nice to see everybody virtually. You recall that we got together a little while ago and there was a primer on metro districts that gave you some background. Hopefully you had a chance to digest some of that. Since that time, we've been working on presenting a draft of a service plan that would initiate the formation of metro districts to serve the Battle North project. As you may recall, I'm going to make a few remarks preliminarily, and then I have a PowerPoint to run you through that will highlight the major provisions of the proposal and the various limitations that exist within that proposal. And then we can have question and answer to your heart's content as far as any issues you may have. As we noted the last time that we met on this topic, we're proposing the organization of 3 metropolitan districts as a package to provide financing for public infrastructure for this project, as well as to accommodate, to the extent necessary, some limited operational functions. In order to organize metropolitan districts in Colorado, we must present a document called a service plan, which is a description of the powers, purposes, functions of the metro districts that are being proposed, and obtain approval of that service plan from the town council before we can proceed to an election to formally organize the metropolitan district. So we're at the point where we have prepared a draft service plan that has been submitted for review. And I'm going to go through some of the highlights of that service plan. Before I do, I just want to make a couple of remarks. In drafting the service plan, we wanted to present a very streamlined, straightforward proposal that would be narrowly tailored to fit the needs of this project. Metro districts in Colorado can perform a wide variety of functions, and depending on the project, one or all of those powers may be necessary. But when we reviewed the needs of this particular project and the financing capability of the project, we determined to boil that down to really just four powers, and I'll go through those later on. But the point is that rather than taking a very expansive approach in this, we wanted to right-size the service plan to directly provide functions that we know are going to be necessary for this project. We also wanted to present a service plan that contained a full suite of protections and limitations, those that would protect the town and future residents with respect to the financial and other activities of the metropolitan districts, while at the same time allowing sufficient flexibility within the service plan for the metro districts to perform their functions to the benefit of the project. Our point of departure for drafting of the service plan was a service plan that Mike provided us from the town of Silt, which we reviewed, and our review of that service plan indicated that it was a really good model for us to use. It's very consistent with other model service plans that are in use within the state of Colorado that have been presented to cities and counties throughout the state. And so we felt that it was a good model to start from. And I believe that we've closely followed that particular model in our drafting. And I point that out because I know that you have not been involved in metro districts previously. There's a little bit of a learning curve involved. But it's important for you to know that what we are presenting to you is in the mainstream in terms of service plans that are presented for development projects in Colorado. And it's a service plan that has provisions in it that would be familiar to any other city, municipality, town, county in the state in terms of their content and limitations. So just to kind of set the table for the presentation, I wanted to provide some general remarks. What I'd like to do now is to share my screen and go through a PowerPoint presentation. And then when we get to the end of that, we can take questions. And hopefully I can make this happen. Here we go. Are you able to see the main screen for the consolidated service plan for Battle of North Metro Districts 1 to 3?
I sure can, Bill. Jay, can you move the two views on the screen up to a corner somewhere?
Let me know what I'm doing. I don't want to cancel it out, but at the same point,
Tell me when you're ready.
did that do it?
No. Yeah, maybe you can. I don't know. Okay, you're getting closer. Can you see what you're doing? There, right there.
It's me, Earl.
Oh, that.
We got it, Jay.
Okay, Bill, please go ahead.
Good to go? Okay. Alrighty then.
Sorry,
So-
Bill, I had to shut your screen off so they can hear you talking, but they don't see your face. I apologize.
Oh, well, that's all right. I can get over that. No problem. I didn't even shave. Okay, so can you see the screen, first of all, that says proposal and schedule?
Yes, we can.
All right, great. So we presented a draft service plan for 3 metropolitan districts that will be subject to your review. It's being submitted in as contemplated by the settlement agreement. We had initially talked about doing this work session tonight, and then tentatively talked about, depending on how things were to go, the next opportunity for a council meeting at which you might consider a resolution to approve the service plans could be March the 20th. That, of course, is within your discretion, but that was an operating assumption we made going in. As noted, in order to have metro districts formally organized, we need to have an election among the qualified electors within the district boundaries. It's not a town-wide election. And the next available election for purposes of organizing metro districts in Colorado is November the 5th of 2024. So that's big picture as to our targets as far as process is concerned. Little general background, you're familiar with some of these data points. Project 225 to 250 residential units, up to 50,000 square feet of commercial space, a spa wellness facility. These assumptions are built into the financing plan that is attached to the service plan. They form the basis for a series of assumptions and projections of future tax base and available revenues. We're proposing 3 districts, which is the maximum allowed under the settlement agreement, a residential district, a commercial district, and an operating district. This is very common in the state to have, when you have a multiple or a multi-use project that has a mix of residential, commercial, and other uses potentially within it. It's very common to have separate metropolitan districts for each of the different uses. In particular, residential uses having a particular assessed value profile from commercial, which has its own assessed value profile for taxes, and then an operating district to basically marry the districts together and serve as a lead agency to interact with, in this case, the town, other governmental entities as may be necessary, and generally to oversee the execution of the purposes that are permitted in the service plan. So we have 3 districts based on different uses within the project. As I indicated, we've got a limited number of powers being authorized. The districts would provide financing for streets, roads, water, including a potable water system and water treatment plant, sanitation, storm drainage, and parks or trails and parks, recreational facilities. Typically, metro districts, their main focus is to finance public infrastructure, which is typically turned over to an existing governmental entity such as yourselves for ongoing operations, ownership operations, and maintenance. However, districts have the power to operate and maintain facilities as well. And so within the service plan, we would have the capability to provide support in terms of open space, trails, management of the restricted parcels that you're familiar with. We can provide support maintenance services for the water treatment plant. We've noted that Eagle River is expected to be the actual operator of that, but the districts have the power to provide resources in support of that. So we've got both financing and some capability for ongoing operations and maintenance. I want to highlight in the service plan a number of restrictions and limitations so that you're clear on those. First of all, we are proposing a specific set of boundaries that are equivalent to the property that is owned by the developer presently. We would not be able to go outside of those boundaries without the town providing its approval. So we wanted to restrict this proposal specifically to this project, and anything further that might come down the road would be subject to town approval. We've only got 4 powers that are authorized, as I noted. They're here on the screen. There's about a dozen powers available under the Special District Act, but we felt we didn't need to go outside of the boundaries of these 4. Any public improvements that would be built would be subject to town approval in terms of construction design, et cetera, and whatever other town approval process there is as a prerequisite to commencing construction. So the town would maintain dominion over the improvements that are actually built. And in fact, the town, of course, will be the entity that approves through the development agreement and subsequent development approvals what those improvements actually consist of. Excuse me. We've incorporated a very important provision, a cap on the maximum amount of debt that can be issued. So there is a total debt cap in the service plan that is based on the projected infrastructure costs. There's an exhibit in the service plan that lays out what those infrastructure costs are. And we took those infrastructure costs and grossed them up a little bit to allow for some capability to handle the cost of issuance for bonds and other factors. We have a cap, very important cap on the debt service tax levy that you'll see. I'll get into the details on that. That is almost universally applicable within metro districts in Colorado to have a debt tax or debt service tax levy maximum. So that is incorporated in this plan. Any debt that might be issued to reimburse the developer for improvements that the developer initially funds would require an independent assessment by an external financial advisor to determine and declare the reasonableness of the terms, including the interest rate of any debt that might be issued to the developer to reimburse. Let me just pause there for a second. It's common in metro district activities, especially in the early stages of a district's life, to not have sufficient tax base to enable the district to go out to the marketplace and issue tax-exempt municipal bonds to finance improvements right from the beginning. So it's very common in metro district projects for the developer to have to come out of pocket to build whatever infrastructure is necessary to get the project rolling and developing, and then wait for the district to mature in terms of its tax base so that bonds can be issued down the road to fund those costs. So what happens is we often have debt that is issued initially to the developer to recognize the costs that the developer is incurring upfront to allow for future reimbursement when bonds can be issued to the marketplace. And so in that setting, because of the related party transaction there, we need to have an independent party involved to assess the financial terms of that structure. And in fact, this is something that the legislature has taken up just in the last legislative session. And they have incorporated or created some new restrictions on what terms can exist for developer issued debt. And basically the service plan incorporates the legislative requirements. But I wanted to point out that there will be an external financial advisor that is independent from the developer that will be asked to opine as to the reasonableness of the terms of any developer debt. Metro districts also have the power to condemn property, just like you do. However, we have provided for a restriction on the exercise of that power so that we don't get into any sort of conflict with the town. There would be no exercise of the condemnation power without the town's prior approval. Additionally, and this is also common, maybe universally in Metro District proposals in the state now, we have an intergovernmental agreement that is attached to the service plan, which the town and the districts would execute, that would provide the town contractual remedies to enforce the limitations that are present in the service plan. Now, the town has rights just by statute to enjoin any activity of a metro district that might go outside the four corners of the service plan. And that injunctive relief has been available for a long time, but it has become common practice to include an intergovernmental agreement between the town and the districts that would provide belt and suspenders and additional contractual remedies to the town that might be more readily available to enforce limitations within the service plan than you might see through a standard injunction action. The other thing I would mention before I leave the slide is that there's a long list of provisions in the statutes that the legislature has imposed over the years, and in particular in the last maybe 5 years, that have been directed towards greater transparency and accountability on the part of metro districts. And those for a long time and historically, metro districts as governmental entities, and it's important to emphasize they are governmental entities just like yourselves. We're subject to the same requirements, many of the same requirements that cities and towns are. So we have to have an annual budget. We have to have an annual audit. We have to have public meetings. All of our activities are subject to the Open Records Act. We have reporting requirements that the legislature has imposed that require recording of information about the metropolitan districts against the property that would be subject to the payment of taxes for those districts. There's just a whole host of statutory obligations that metro districts have that are specifically designed to ensure accountability and transparency. It's very important to emphasize those. Many of those are ones that the town itself is subject to. So benefits. Obviously, the organization of these metro districts will support the development of this project and this property, which has been vacant for years. It will help to implement the settlement agreement that so much time was spent on, and it will enable the development of this project and the provision of public infrastructure services that would otherwise be very difficult to obtain and finance. One of the key benefits of metro districts that is always the bellwether in terms of the reasons we use them is the ability to issue tax-exempt municipal bonds. Tax-exempt bonds obviously carry an interest rate that is much lower than private financing interest rates would be. And just like the town, the districts would have the ability to access the tax exempt municipal bond markets to pay for the costs of public infrastructure that would otherwise be much more costly if it were only financed through private means. There are some extraordinary benefits associated with this particular proposal and this particular project. First of all, the districts would be able to finance a water treatment plant that, but for which the project could not proceed. The districts, while they're not expected to be responsible for the operations of the water treatment plant, Eagle River is expected to serve that function. But the districts would be in a position to provide funding for operation, or rather for maintenance services that would be necessary to ensure the proper functioning of that water treatment plant. There are street improvements that will be provided, including those to Malio Park Road that would be of community-wide benefit. I know that that has been something that has been on the minds of council for some time. There are improvements that would address that need. There would also be recreation trails that would be put into the open space areas that would be a benefit to the wider community. And last but not least, the metro districts would provide a governmental entity that could oversee the management of the restricted parcels in whatever respect those restricted parcels might require activity. And doing so through a mechanism where there's great transparency and accountability. So there's some significant benefits that are unique to this particular project that these metro districts can provide. Going on to some mechanics, I mentioned that we are proposing 3 metro districts. The way we do this is in 2 stages. We start with initial boundaries that are designed to provide a home, if you will, for the districts to live on at the point of initial organization. And then we provide for an expanded area, an inclusion area boundary that would represent the future areas that would ultimately be included within one of these districts that would provide tax base as development occurs to permit the financing activities to occur. But initially, we found over the years that it's preferable to start out with small district boundaries so that you have a place for them to exist until the development plan is fully baked. And you know where, when and where different areas of the project will be developing. We have found that if we draw those boundaries out prematurely, then we end up having to redraw them later on, and there's a cost and expense associated with doing that. So we start out with these 3 district boundaries. I don't know how well you can see it on the screen, but we have District 1, 2, and 3 within this parcel 7 adjacent to Highway 24. And that would be the initial boundaries. So then we have the inclusion area, and I'm sure this map is generally familiar to you. The inclusion area is in the gray here. These are all the property that would be eligible to be included within the boundaries of one of the districts. And the timeline for which these properties would be included in a district would be dependent upon the actual pace of development and some advice from our financial advisors in terms of proper timing for bond issuance purposes. But again, we're not able to go outside these boundaries, the gray areas, in terms of including any property into any district without the town approving that.
Bill, if I can just jump in while you've got that.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah. So the council should note that that excludes the land being conveyed to the town as part of the settlement. So the town's property will not be part of the district's boundaries. It also excludes the reservoir area.
Correct.
And then does that mean that the parcels that will be conveyed at a later date will drop out of the district, like the OTP and the processing parcel that are currently included. I think Tim and I have discussed this.
Yeah, that's the thought.
Yeah.
Those are still restricted parcels that we would initially continue to maintain and remediate. And then once that was done, and if the town decided to take title to those parcels, they could, at the town's discretion, be dropped out.
I see a hand by Muncie. Is that for real, Muncie?
It is for real, and hopefully it won't upset anyone, but I just wanted to add a little context around that last question, which is what's shown in the gray is the inclusion area. It still would take an action to include any part of that within one of the districts. So as it relates to the restricted parcels that the town in some instances would have an option to acquire, we wouldn't necessarily ever have put say if it's parcel, whichever it is, the processing area, we wouldn't necessarily have ever put that into a district. But if we did, we would exclude it once the town took title to it, right? But some of those parcels that the town will likely never take title to, if a district would take title to it so that there is an owner present for purposes of monitoring and complying with the EPA CDPHE requirements, that district would be the property owner. And then that restricted parcel would be put into the boundaries of the district that then was the property owner there. So that there would be, for the long haul, right, a governmental entity that would be in place to deal with those parcels. And that's partially in response to some concerns that we heard from the town staff and the town generally about how the ownership and compliance with the environmental obligations would be addressed on a going forward basis for decades.
Thank you, Muncie.
All right. Moving on then to the meat here. Metro districts, as I noted, are primarily financing mechanisms. And so here are the key financial terms that are baked into the service plan. First of all, we have estimated costs of public improvements of roughly 52 million. There is an exhibit in the service plan that details those by type of improvement that can be reviewed. We have a total combined debt limit of 62 million based on that 52 million projected infrastructure cost. And what I mean by combined debt limit is that's a shared debt limit among all three districts. So each district does not have $62 million individually to devote towards the project. It's just not necessary. And so we have a combined debt limit of 62 million. And the reason there's a difference between the two is to account for costs of issuance, which can include reserve funds, capitalized interest funds, other costs of issuance for professionals. And generally, we look to have a bigger gap between these numbers. But we felt that in this case, and again, in keeping with the notion to try to narrow this down as much as we can, we felt that it was reasonable to propose the 62 million in reference to that $52 million estimated infrastructure cost. I mentioned earlier, we have a maximum debt service mill levy, very important. It's 50 mills. It is subject to adjustment, as noted here, to the extent that there are radical changes in the method by which assessed value is calculated after the districts are organized. It's possible to adjust this 50 mills to offset any loss in revenue that might occur at the 50 mills solely due to legislative changes in the method for calculating assessed value. So the notion here is that it's revenue neutral to the taxpayer. And it preserves the revenue stream that the metro districts were organized to rely upon. Operations and maintenance mill levy is another source of revenue for administrative and, as the name would suggest, operations and maintenance costs. And that'll be based on what those costs actually are. And the town goes through a budgeting process each year to determine what your operations levy is going to be. You look at your contracts, you look at your needs, you make a projection, and you establish a property tax mill levy to generate revenues that will meet those operations. You can't make up costs to, generate more revenue here than is actually necessary. It'd be a violation of budget law to do so. But it's important to equip the metro districts with the ability, first of all, to maintain their good standing in Colorado and under the state law, but also to maintain, those facilities that are otherwise incumbent upon the metro district to maintain for the benefit of everyone. There is also a maximum debt mill levy imposition term, which is a long way of saying there's a 30-year maximum term on the repayment of any debt that is issued under this service plan. 30 years is a very common limit. You need to have some kind of limit in there as to how long the debt service mill levy would go on. Statewide, really 30 years has become a standard to provide guardrails relative to how long debt can be outstanding. By statute, we also have the ability to impose and collect fees for services and facilities. And those by statute, and by law, those fees have to be reasonably related to the cost of providing that service. Again, you can't just make up what your cost might be. You have to there has to be a reasonable relationship between the fees that are being imposed and the services for which those fees are imposed. But it's another source of revenue that is common for metro districts, and these districts would be able to use that revenue stream. We've got a couple of, we have by the way, a financing plan that is attached to the service plan that incorporates assumptions regarding future development values and future tax revenues upon which projected bond issuances were determined. And so the financing plan shows a Series 2026 issuance of about 36 million, and then a Series 2036 issuance that would refinance the bonds that were issued in 2026 and provide an additional 24 million in additional funding at that time. And just to spend a minute longer on that, so when these districts, if they are approved at the service plan level, would go to an organizational election in November. And typically, we're not going to see a bond issue coming out of a newly organized metro district, at least not a bond issue to the marketplace, out of a newly organized metro district right away. So although it's possible, it depends on the pace of development and the growth in assessed value. So that's the reason you see a Series 2026 proposed bond issuance here, to enable some time for the project to take flight and to be able to attract bond issue investors at a future date. Obviously, the actual timing for issuance will be a function of market conditions, the pace of development approvals and the like. But the financing plan that is attached shows, based upon reasonable assumptions, the ability of the metro district to fund up to that $52 million in estimated cost of public improvements above. But the actual working out of that will be a function of facts and circumstances that happen in the future. But you can know that the amount of debt that can be issued by a metro district is going to be self-regulating because of the fact that you have these guardrails in the service plan, including, most importantly, the maximum debt service mill levy of 50 mils. 50 mils as applied against a certain tax base will produce a certain amount of revenue, and that amount of revenue will be recognized by the bond market at some level to support an amount of bond issuance. So even though the actual pace of development and the arrival of the assessed value will be subject to future facts and circumstances, what you put in place here within the service plan is a mechanism by which the Metro District A has the capability to finance the improvements that are necessary for the project, and B will not finance those improvements more quickly than the assessed value allows. So in that sense, it's a self-regulating, self-governing financing plan that is commonly used in the state to project future bond issuances and the use of proceeds for building public infrastructure. There was a question that I think someone asked the last time we were together as to, what else, what other metro districts do we have out there, and how does this one look in comparison to those? And here's a chart that we put together. You'll see you've got 4 columns here. You've got your district O&M mill levy, your debt service levy. Then you have a column for overlapping mill levies, which are mill levies from the school district or other taxing jurisdictions, and then a grand total mill levy. And then you can just run your eye over the list. If you look at the O&M mill levy, we're projecting about 10 mills necessary for O&M here. That's at the low end of what you see on this list of representative metro districts. The debt service levy, as I noted, the 50 mil debt service mill levy is very, very common throughout the state. And so what you're seeing on this list is that we're, right slotted in, right in line with the majority of those that we see. I think Eagle Vale is a little different because they don't have a lot of improvements that they have outstanding bonds to pay. But that's a snapshot of the lay of the land in terms of mill levies. That's the end of my formal presentation. I hope I covered enough information and have given you a foundation to guide your review of the service plan. The service plan is in the hands of Mike and Michelle, and we're looking forward to the opportunity to work through comments and looking forward to your comments. So I will pause.
Thank you, Bill. Brian, you got anything right now?
So even though that it's like a phased approach with the spending, with capital improvements and things in the Metro Districts 1, 2, 3, are you going straight to the 50 mil levy and all these, like, or does it like tier up? Does it start at 25 because of the amount of, I guess, debt that you won't have debt yet because you haven't issued the bonds, but like, so I guess how does that apply to the first homes when they move in? They're going to get the maximum Metro District mill levy possible right away, like all those first residents that'll be out there.
The actual mill levy that ends up, so this is a maximum mill levy that we were showing, and so it's pretty common to come in at less than that. And you can't have one, there's not one size fits all here. But what we do, and DA Davidson is our financial advisor, they're in the hood here, but they're not a participant, so they're not able to speak. So you're going to have to rely on the lawyer to do it. But we will get a meeting with our investment advisor. They'll look at the projected development that is to occur in whatever phase we're looking at. Typically, we'll look at more than one phase. and determine what the future assessed valuation within that area will be, and therefore the revenue stream that will come off of that. And then from that revenue stream, they can determine what the market will allow in terms of amount of debt, and what mill levy the market will require in order to fund that debt. So the higher the amount of debt, the higher the amount of mill levy, obviously. But it's a marketing factor for the developer. You know, they never want to disadvantage the opportunity to develop by virtue of having high property taxes. So that's always part of the calculus. But what I can tell you in my experience has been that even though you see a 50 mil cap, it's pretty common that the actual mill levy is less than that. But again, it's a case by case determination.
Okay, and then say, you know, just looking through the capital list, for example, say you get all the way through phase 1 and 2, and then get to phase 3, and you've already blown through almost your full allowable 60 million or $54 million estimate, and your development is done, and you still need to do some things. What happens then?
Well, the developer is the one that has to foot the bill for that. Okay, and it's very common. Metro districts typically are not able to fund 100% of those development costs. So the developer has always got skin in the game, and the developer would be the entity responsible for the ultimate financing of improvements that could not be financed through Metro district bonds.
Okay, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, you know, like, it's tied to both those metro districts and all that are tied to then ongoing environmental obligations, the other metro districts. So I just want to make sure that, you know, this developer, maybe another developer in the future, who knows, if you get to that point and there's a bankruptcy or something like that, then the ongoing environmental obligations are still taken care of.
Yeah. And I think.
Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
I was just gonna say, I think, you know, we've had well over a decade now of understanding the obligations and requirements. So those are probably the easiest financial matter to factor into the operating mill levy for us. It's some of the, you know, as you're saying, the construction costs and other things that are more difficult to fully define, especially when it's years out.
Yeah, and kind of related to that, can I ask where you got your water treatment plant estimate?
So all of our estimates are pretty preliminary because they're based off conceptual plans. We do have an environment or a design firm that is working on a more formal water treatment plant estimate that we'll have within the next week or so. So that this is pretty conceptual, and we'll see what it looks like in another week or two.
Can you share that with us?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then one last one for now. The trails and all of those things. I know that the town has, or so the public improvements, recreation and things like that. I just want to make sure in the valley here, I don't know, Bill might not be as familiar with the resort area up here, but metro districts have kind of a reputation for being gated communities. You know, they'll restrict public access to roads for road bikers and people through these kind of parks and things like that. And I just wanted to make sure the way that we've written all of this, that we ensure public access to these, you know, amenities once built.
Yeah, none of these, you know, metro district finance things are, I mean, they're privately financed, but they're open to the public. And I think it might even discuss that in the service plan bill in some places, I'm not sure.
What was the question, Tim?
Just if, like, public improvements like trails and other things are open to the public.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's a matter of when they're publicly financed by metro districts, they need to be publicly open.
And that's not just to people within the metro district boundary, that's publicly open.
Correct. That's correct. I am seeing a hand from Muncie. I don't know if it's my job to point that out, but it sounds like maybe he had a comment on this topic.
Yes, really on the first question, I believe that, and I can't see well enough to tell who asked the question, but in that series of questions, what it had to do with the restricted parcels that would be owned up by and respond, and a district would be responsible for. There wouldn't be any anticipated capital costs, so it wouldn't be the 50 mills. It would be the O&M mill levy of roughly 10 or perhaps a little less or a little more. That would be at issue there. And Tim can comment a bit on that, but that's largely just filing reports and things of that nature. So there's not anticipated to be a lot of cost associated with that, but it wouldn't be capital cost. It would just be sort of O&M ownership related matters. Most likely the Metro District who would take that position would not be the residential district. It would be one of the other two, most likely the commercial.
And just to follow up on that, as Muncie said, there's not capital cost there because we, Battle North, or we in conjunction with the water district would actually be doing the remediation of those parcels outside of the Metro District. So for the OTP parcel or for the Molloy parcel, we would be funding that that remediation, that capital cost before the Metro District. Well, I don't know if it would be before the Metro District took ownership of it, but at least they wouldn't be funding it. The Metro District would not.
Right, but you'd have to finish the roads and the infrastructure and all of that in order to get people in order to start generating revenue for the, you know, that's what I was trying to get at, but. Yeah,
But
no, I
until
think
that time,
clarified it.
we're still responsible for that. Yeah.
Thanks.
So, my question goes to what you're saying. It sounds like what you're contemplating is that districts aren't involved at all in managing or remediating the contaminated sites, but that is going to be outside the district and will be the responsibility of Battle Mountain. Is that the suggestion?
Yeah, right now we've got a contractual agreement with the water district to remediate the OTP site. Again, as long as the reservoir is constructed. And for the Molloy site, we're already working on a work plan now to remediate that. So those two areas would be done probably before the district's even formally, well, not before the district's formed, but they're anticipated to be done by Battle North or Battle North with a partner.
But there's also Rex Flats, which it was outside the district map.
Yes, and Rex Flats is actually not even within the town.
Well, I'm concerned with long-term, since the districts aren't having any responsibility for these functions. Who is going to be responsible for managing the property or dealing with any additional contamination or problems with these properties?
Sure. So this gets a little complicated, but Battle North is not responsible for any remediation of any of the properties. The EPA and CDBHE today consider those properties remediated, unless we want to change the uses of those properties and allow more residential use or further activity on them. So for the OTP or Molloy, which we want to develop, we have to further remediate it and then delist that property. But for a property like Rex Flats or even the CTP, there's no further work. All that is required is oversight and management, which is what the Metro District would take care of.
But when you were going through the functions of the Metro District in there,
Yeah,
there were 4, and they said they only had 4 powers.
it's within that parks and open space.
What?
Parks and open space is where this power would fall.
To me, that's not managing. It didn't say parks and open space, it said parks and recreation.
If you look at the plan itself, the model service plan, it does talk about within it, the model service plan, under that parks and recreation, the oversight of the restricted parcels.
Okay, because that to me is not what one normally considers as parks and recreation function. Our power within that power, and I'm just really concerned as to also the people in the district are going to understand and recognize the extent of the obligation they have here.
So the park and recreation power of metro districts is pretty flexible. You know, there's property that can be, it's either open space, it can be just left as open space, and actually that fits within a, believe it or not, a park and recreation function. And so whatever I guess administrative responsibilities are associated with open space, in order to maintain the integrity of that open space, I can legitimately use the metro district to accommodate those needs. And so, you know, we've looked at this issue in conjunction with the actual expected requirements here. And we're comfortable that the metro district, you know, can provide what we understand to be the expected needs in the area. And the advantage, you know, for the metro district doing it is you've got a governmental entity in the mix as opposed to a private entity. And there's just greater transparency and accountability in conjunction with those functions. Hopefully that helps.
I just think it's really important that be spelled out very clearly.
Understood.
So I'm sorry, I don't, if I'm jumping in inappropriately, Lynn, but if you look on page 6 of the draft service plan, at the top of page 6 is this subparagraph 4, Parks and Recreation. If you look toward the end of that paragraph, there's language that is intended to address precisely what you're talking about.
Okay.
Where it talks about other reporting and other requirements relative to certain open space parcels that are or will be subject to certain restrictive covenants relative to certain environmental conditions present on the same. So that's where that authority is documented.
See it only in the last sentence of that paragraph where you refer to restrictive covenants relative to certain environmental conditions.
Exactly.
Correct.
Not sure that provides proper notice.
Well, that's the provision that's intended to address the restricted parcels. And if you're proposing or suggesting that there be more elaboration there, I don't see that being.
Yeah, we can expand on that to make it clear. I don't, because it is clear to us that we have the capability to do this.
Lynn, is that a confirmation if you would like to see more transparency in that last paragraph to make it clear as to the obligations for the ongoing environmental work that needs to be done? So yeah, Bill, if we can expand on that a little bit and add a little more, just, I think elaboration for transparency's sake, that would be greatly appreciated.
Happy to.
Okay. Anything else right now, Lynn? Lynn?
No.
Is there anything else? Oh, you don't. Okay.
Sorry, no questions. Sorry.
Well, I just have a question, and it's more of a fear, but and it just based on our history, not you and I, Tim. You know, we're here because of our contractual agreements eroding, and when I first met you all, well, that's not true. When I first met you all as a council member, you said, we're not gonna honor our agreements. And then, you know, that led down the road of where we are now, obviously not, you know, agreeing on the agreement that was made, you know, for the amendment agreement in 2012. So where do we go from here? I know we're in a settlement talk, and maybe the question is for our attorney or Mike. How do we make these agreements good for the town? I mean, I have a real fear. I just have a fear. So, and I'm truly asking, like, how is it gonna be different?
I mean, Bill, do you want to address that? How does the town ensure that what's in this document is abided by? I think.
Yeah.
I'll let you.
Sure. Yeah, we have there's a long history in Colorado of metro districts being approved with service plans like this. There are very clear statutory restrictions on what metro districts can engage in. And there are very clear restrictions, or rather very clear legislative provisions that enable the town to ensure and enforce the limitations that are built into a service plan such as this. And those include, and Mike can speak to this as well, those include an injunctive power to actually enjoin, prevent, stop a metro district from acting in a manner that is outside of the authority that was granted to it within the service plan. And so as the town, you have the direct right to file an action. If you see an action that the metro district is engaged in, and you will know it because metro district actions are fully transparent. The board meetings are open to the public, agendas are open to the public. The town will have the opportunity to file an action to stop the metro district from engaging in that activity. And then, as I also mentioned, in addition to that, it's become very common and best practice, frankly, to have an intergovernmental agreement that includes all of the limitations that are in the service plan, all of the authority that is in the service plan. It's recited. If you take a look at that intergovernmental agreement that we drafted and included as an attachment to the service plan, it lays out all of the limitations that are present in this service plan. And it gives the town contractual remedies in addition to the injunctive relief to stop the metro district from engaging in those activities. So there's a very well-developed body of law that gives the town oversight, responsibility, not responsibility, but oversight of the metro district's activities. And what we've tried to do in this service plan is to build in limitations that are the key ones. You know, what are the maximum property taxes? How long can the debt be outstanding? Do we have to get the town approval for additional boundaries to be included? Do we have to get the town approval for construction? All of those things are in this service plan. And I feel very confident that this service plan being very similar, it's on all fours with other service plans throughout the state that other jurisdictions like yourselves have approved. And these limitations work, and you have the power to call the district in and require it to conform to the service plan provisions. I can't overstate that.
I guess I do see obviously a need for a water district, and that makes a lot of sense. What is different? And I know we got this. I don't know if I really had this answered last time you were here, but what is different with the parks? Let's just say parks or recreation district, apart from a PUD posting a bond or a letter of credit that if they don't get these things done, the town will have recourse to get them done.
Well, I need to ask you to differentiate between land use approvals and development approvals. And I see Muncie's raising his hand, so I'll let him weigh in a second. But we have land use approvals and we have protections that are available to the town within the land use approval process, whereby you have letters of credit and other guarantees to ensure that improvements that are required by the town for a particular development will in fact be provided. So there's nothing about the organization of the metro districts that changes that. That's a separate channel. The metro districts are not it's not a land use approval that we're talking about. It's simply an approval of a resource, a financial resource to provide financing for those improvements that the town approves. And the developer will sign a development agreement with respect to those improvements that will guarantee, as it typically is the case, will guarantee those improvements. And that happens separately from the metro district. So we need to keep that separate. Muncie, I don't know if I covered your question or your remark or not.
You did, and I would just say the way, and Mike, I don't want to step on anything Mike might want to add on this, but when a development application comes through for a plat to develop individual lots for individual homes or apartment buildings or whatever it may be, your normal process will apply. There'll be an agreement executed with that applicant where you'll require assurance of completion of the public improvements that you've identified as being required as a condition of that approval. It may be that the Metro District is the financing mechanism for that. And it may be, or it may not be, that the Metro District becomes an additional party to that agreement, but it will be under your existing process, under your code. There will be no special arrangements. It'll be just your normal process for that.
Thanks, Muncie. I guess I just, you listed improvement or benefits to the town. One was water district to run the water system. One was the improvement of Molloy Park Road. Can you hear me? I'm sorry. One was a water district, the benefits to the town. One was a water district, one was improvements to Molloy Park Road. One was managing the restricted areas, and there was one other. You said, but I also feel like we would already have those benefits. So I don't know how the Metro District gives us those benefits, where as not having a Metro District, we wouldn't still get those benefits. Other than the water district, obviously water running.
Well, as we indicated earlier, I don't think there's any other governmental entity out there that is prepared to fund the costs that are necessary to develop this project. And that's the primary purpose for proposing metro districts in conjunction with the project. It certainly, there may be certain responsibilities that a developer would deliver on instead of a metro district. But one thing the developer can't deliver on, and the town isn't delivering on, is access to tax exempt municipal financing to make the project happen. And that's really the main benefit of using these metro districts, is making this project affordable and capable of happening.
So just to clarify, they're proposing 3 districts, but that those districts would have 4 different powers. So it's not that there's a water district and a recreation district, and I realize this is kind of semantics.
No, he just said 4 benefits.
Yeah, they're the powers that these districts will have to operate under the service plan. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I understand. And thanks for your patience, because obviously totally new territory. So
Mine's pretty simple. It looks like 2026 is the first bonds you want to start drawing on it. Is that realistic in 2 years?
You know, it's our best guess, right? I mean, we think if we get through the settlement this year and we have to go then through a subdivision process and we've got to do a water plan, you know, it's at least a couple of years. So that's probably the best guess of when it could happen. But again, it could move.
Okay.
Sure.
That's all I had.
So we have a housing code, where it will be 20, I think it's 20%, right? Affordable. And, I would like, we were always trying to figure out how, now we say affordable and it generally isn't. And so we're trying to get, a push going to try to get housing that a local can afford to buy into. I know you've anticipated that, but with metro districts, I'm kind of concerned about exactly how much these fees are going to be, taxes, from the 3 metro districts, and can we set up a mechanism to where the designated, call it local, call it affordable, call it too expensive, but can have a lesser bill every month, basically.
I'm gonna put that to Bill.
Yeah, you know, the simple answer to that would be leave them out of the metro district. You know, leave that area that is going to be developed for affordable housing out of the metro district. It probably won't generate a tremendous amount of revenue, you know, given the values that are associated with that. So that's one strategy. Another strategy that I've used in other cases is a little bit technical, so I'm a little reluctant to get down in the weeds with it, but there are ways to differentiate the mill levy within a given district. So the residential district where the residential property would be. There are techniques we can use to lower the mill levy that would be applicable to the affordable housing areas, to accommodate, you know, sensitivity in that area. So I think there's a way to deal with that, should that circumstance arise.
But how do we, I mean, that is a concern of this council. How do we address that today when we're approving a service plan? I mean, the council's not gonna get another bite of the apple on that question down the road.
Well, we'll have to talk about it. I mean, the technique that you and I talked about, Mike, is the sub-district, which is a provision in the statute that allows you to, you know, separately identify an area and tax at a different level. You know, if I guess the question is, we could probably provide something in the service plan that would address the potential for affordable housing down the road and the use of a sub-district to reduce the property taxes applicable to that area. It's a little bit ambiguous because we don't know what we're dealing with right now. I mean, that's down the road, and it's hard to make a definitive commitment without having, you know, more flesh on the bones. Muncie, you raising your hand. Do you want to add something in?
Yeah, thank you. There is one other aspect of this, and that is depending on how the affordable or attainable, whatever we call it, housing is delivered. There are some models for delivering that would involve the ownership of that project or those units being owned by an entity that is exempt from taxation. In other words, it could be in the district, but not be subject to paying any property taxes by the nature of the entity that owns that project. So that's just another piece of the equation. And, you know, how this actually happens is going to be determined in the future, right? So there's not including it within that site within the district, although the district likely will have some role in providing infrastructure to support it. And so there's questions of fairness with the other people that are paying taxes for that. There's a sub-district notion, and then there's if the ownership is such that the project is just exempt from taxation, then it won't be paying any property taxes.
I understand. Yeah, I understand the concern here, and we do have some techniques for addressing it. It's probably not something we can solve in this conversation right here, but Mike, I'd be happy to, you know, pick up the thread with you and you know, develop it a little bit further with these remarks having been made.
Thank you. Yeah, Lynn, go ahead.
I'm still concerned that the districts exclude Rex Flats, which is not going to be remediated. So I'm assuming from this map that the districts have no responsibility vis-a-vis Rex Flat.
That's correct. The Rex Flats, the town of Gilman are outside. Well, first of all, they're going to be outside of the town of Minturn, but they would still be the responsibility of the owner, which is, I mean, for that, it's Battle South. So they would still be our responsibility. We have obligations with EPA and contracts where we cannot, again, we're not responsible for any remediation of the sites. If nothing happens there, we're just at this point responsible for enforcing some restrictive covenants that have been recorded against those sites.
Yeah, I'm thinking if, you know, people start trespassing there and issues like that.
Sure, and that's what we're responsible for. We're responsible to monitor them, fencing, signage, working with the sheriff's department.
And you'll still be around 10, 20 years from now?
We're gonna have to be, someone's gonna have to own that parcel. I don't know if it'll be us or a future owner, but something's gonna have to be figured out for those.
You guys have a, what do you call it? Every year you have an annual meet with the EPA and you have to issue a report on those.
Yeah, we have a yearly report
forget
that
what it's
goes in. I forget what it's called too. But yeah, every year we have to do, as part of the restrictive covenants, it's required that we have an annual report that we submit to the EPA. And we meet with the EPA quarterly. I think there's a meeting tomorrow where it's a public meeting and the EPA talks about the sites, what's going on, what the issues are, and so on. So it's a very public process, happens quarterly. We have an annual report. And again, as the landowner, we would still be responsible for those sites that are outside of this metro district.
If any of you would like to attend that meeting tomorrow, feel free to let me know. I am unable to attend that meeting. I'll be down in Denver. So you can feel free to sit in and see what they talk about. And all the work that's being done on a continual basis to monitor what's happening.
It's via Zoom.
Via Zoom.
Used to get a kick out of.
John got a kick of all sorts of things, yes.
Anything else for Tim and Bill and Muncie?
If the council's done, if I might ask a couple questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, Kate.
Oh, and Kate.
I'm good. I'll let Michelle ask questions.
I'm so sorry that I pulled an Earl and I forgot that you were online.
No problem. I had nothing further.
Okay. So Tim, thank you so much. And I apologize, I didn't get to look at some of this more in depth before tonight. But where on your engineer's opinion of probable cost is, you guys are looking to do a well, if I recall? Is that correct?
No, it's not a well, it's called a headgate well. It's really just a very shallow, either vertical or horizontal trench, so you're actually pulling the water, not right from the surface of the river, but just below the surface in the alluvial of the riverbed.
And where is that listed on this list?
I don't know if it was broken out into that level of detail, Michelle.
Okay, I'm just curious about river diversion. And do you plan to have ERWSD take a look at these numbers in advance of formal submittal
Of the service plan?
of the estimated costs associated with the infrastructure to be built? I know it's not a formal development application.
Yeah.
But in order to make sure that you're getting your mill levy correct, I just wonder if there's a value in understanding the people that are gonna build the infrastructure agree with your costs associated before you commit to a certain level of funding.
Well, I think, and Bill, you can talk a little bit about this. We're pretty much at the max of what we could borrow anyway.
Okay.
So even if the ERSD says, you know what, you're $100 million short, it's not gonna make a difference.
Okay.
The 50 mils is the maximum mill levy, and the debt service that can be issued, I think, is the maximum, right, Bill? So there's really, I mean, I think our numbers, I'm comfortable with them, but I don't know that, spending, tens of thousands of dollars on engineers to analyze costs that are gonna happen 2 or 3 years from now on a solution that might not even happen to begin with is gonna make any difference.
Thanks for helping me understand that.
Sure.
All right, we got any more questions?
I think what would be helpful is, Michelle and I have both taken some notes. But if you have specific kind of comments or concerns based upon this presentation that you want to make sure that Michelle and I are following up in our subsequent discussions with Battle Mountain and helping it articulate them would be beneficial for us.
I think you covered the employee or affordable housing. That's definitely big. But
Bill, can I ask you, going back to Brian's question about public access, did you say that all metro districts are required to provide public access to all members of the public? So I won't add that as a note for clarification in the document itself, if that's already a requirement.
Yeah, any publicly, any metro district funded amenity is by definition a public amenity that has to be open to the general public, not just the members of that community. There are some nuances to that, but when it comes to parks and trails and things of that nature, any publicly funded facility, amenity like that has to be available to the general public. The Metro District has the ability to adopt rules and regulations, just like anybody, any governmental entity would to govern access. But that's the legal principle.
Thank you.
Well, with that in mind, we've got like a 2-acre lot coming on board with the towns, hopefully soon. Your Metro District could build us a recreation center there.
We'll have to change the boundaries.
Have to up the mill levy.
Yeah, just a thought. Okay, I think we beat this horse for a while. Tim, any concerns or thoughts on your head, in your head about it?
No, I appreciate the comments, and as Bill said, we'll get together and talk with Michelle and Mike and add some of the language that you guys have suggested and hopefully come back with a plan that you're comfortable with.
But other than those few comments provided by council, you'll be looking at relatively close to the same plan with with the adjustments to affordable housing, the addition of, increased transparency for the ongoing remediation piece within that recreation, open space metro district. Any other notes? Yep, so it'll look very similar to what you saw tonight. Okay.
Great, Tim, thank you very much.
Thank
Bill,
you.
thank you, and Muncy, thanks for chiming in.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
You bet.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody want to talk about any future agenda items?
I do think we should have a discussion about maybe not the definition of SFEs, but ways to look at how we can use our powers of SFE to encourage development that aligns with our community plan.
Michelle probably want to do some
I know it's been on-
contact Susan and Christie.
Been on our agenda, future TBD for a long time, and I think it would just be good to talk about it. And maybe we can even generate a list of things to bring to our attorneys.
I'm wondering if that should be a work session.
Susan will probably want to have it as an executive session, given that it's closely tied to several legal matters that are occurring right now.
Anything else for future items? Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Gusty, second by Aaron, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're done.